There's a couple thoughts, Tom. Again, thank you for the great work you do and for the panel. And I want to pick up on a few things Tony and Vince started this off with. Tony talked about the incredible intelligence capabilities this country has and how you need the right people in control and manage that. More importantly, you need people who are actually elected to have the ultimate say. So remember back during the transition, Chuck Schumer on one of the Sunday shows says when Donald Trump when President-elect Trump is concerned about the leaks, he says, you got to be careful. Remember, the intelligence community has 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. And when I heard that statement, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That is not how it works in the United States of America. It's not unelected people getting back at folks who stood in front of the voters, name on a ballot, and were elected by we the people. So that, to me, is probably the biggest concern about some of these things we're seeing from the swamp. Here's how serious it is. Think about what's happened at the very top of the FBI. Jim Comey fired. Deputy Director Andrew McCabe fired. Now faces criminal referral, maybe prosecution. Fired for, as Vince indicated, lying 4 separate occasions to the FBI, 3 of those under oath. Here's how bad Mr. McCabe was and thought he was so above it all. He not only leaks information to the Wall Street Journal for his personal interest, not in the public interest, not for the FBI. He leaks it. Devlin Barrett then runs the story the next day. When the story runs, what does McCabe do? If you saw the Inspector General's report, he gets on the phone and calls up 2 other people, not associated with the leak at all, and reads them the Riot Act as a way to cover his tracks. Now, you talk about as bad as it gets and the power that some people believe they had. So this is how serious it is. So you've got Jim Comey fired, Deputy Director Andrew McCabe fired, facing criminal prosecution potentially. Jim Baker, Chief Counsel at the FBI, demoted, reassigned. Peter Strzok, Deputy Head of Counterintelligence, demoted, reassigned. Lisa Page, FBI Counsel, demoted, reassigned. So this is a serious, these are the top people, some of the very top people at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I don't know any time where we've seen that many people fired, potentially facing prosecution, demoted, or reassigned in any other type of agency. Second, Vince mentioned the January 6th meeting in Trump Tower, the very first memo. And I had this same takeaway that Vince did. We thought this was the case before. The news hook was the fact that Comey was briefing the president. That gave it the weight, the, quote, legitimacy the press wanted, and it instantly is leaked, and of course CNN runs with the story. Oh, the dossier was so important, the FBI director felt he needed to brief the president-elect on that document. I've thought all along, I don't know this for sure, but I still believe this, that Clapper was the guy who orchestrated the entire thing and orchestrated the leak. CNN ran with the story, BuzzFeed then prints the entire dossier. And finally, I would just say this, well, 2 other thoughts. Here's how crazy the swamp is. And I thought we were talking about this the other day. Think of what started the whole special counsel investigation. Rod Rosenstein writes the memo to fire James Comey. James Comey leaks another document to the New York Times to create momentum for a special counsel, and of course he wanted Robert Mueller to be the special counsel. Rod Rosenstein then names Bob Mueller as the special counsel and is overseeing that investigation, and one of the things they're looking at was their obstruction of justice in how Jim Comey was fired. I mean, this is the biggest roundabout circle thing I've ever seen, and it just drives Americans crazy when they see all this, and probably what drives them the most crazy, and I'll finish here, is the double standard, or said better, 2 standards. One set of rules for us regular people, but a different set if your name is Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Lynch, Lerner. Nothing frustrates the American people more. And this is why this is also important. In this great country, and this was in your opening comments, Tom, in this great country, it is supposed to be equal treatment under the law. From the highest person to the whomever, it is equal treatment for every single individual. That the rule of law and equal treatment under the law is of paramount importance. And that's why we've got to get the answers and keep digging so that the American people can rest assured that that's still the case.
Thank you, Congressman Jordan. You know, what occurs to me also about that meeting that Comey set up, remember, this is the first meeting the president had with the FBI director,
yep.
President-elect, and he ambushes him with this material. That was orchestrated in the Oval Office. President Obama, Clapper, Brennan,
well said.
Rice, and Comey all talked about what he was going to do.
Yeah, and they had a choreograph.
And,
right?
and you read Comey's interview about it with George Stephanopoulos. I didn't see it in the book. I haven't read all the book, to be fair. Obama looked at him and raised his eyebrows, saying, it's going to be a big deal. Watch it. Obama's in the middle of this. And this is going to be, I think, an increasing focus over the next year or so, is Obama's involvement in the handling of the dossier and the directing of all these resources targeting Donald Trump and defending Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, we don't know that yet, but what we do know is this thing was planned all the way down to you're staying with him, just going to be James Comey and the president. Clapper's the one who told him to stay. I mean, everything points to Clapper certainly choreographing this thing. Again, we don't have definitive proof, but that's where my hunch is. Clapper was the guy who leaked it after it happened.
I believe everything.
President Trump is calling for Democratic Senator Jon Tester to resign, tweeting that a lot of Tester's allegations against White House Dr. Ronny Jackson are being proven wrong. The president even brought it up at his Michigan rally this weekend.
Tester started throwing out things that he's heard. Well, I know things about Tester that I could say, too. And if I said them, he'd never be elected again.
Jackson dropped his name from consideration as VA Secretary nominee late last week after allegations of drunk driving and improper behavior on the job. But Fox News has learned the Defense Department Inspector General has received the allegations into Jackson, is assessing next steps in this case, but also that the Secret Service looked into this, and a thorough review of GSA documents and police documents provided by the White House that there is no evidence that Jackson wrecked his car after drinking at a party. In fact, none of the reports involve drunk driving or anything that would fit the description, according to the Secret Service, of charges that the Democrats leveled at Jackson. Senior political analyst Britt Hume joins us now with just what's going on here. Good evening, Britt.
Well, Brad, it was also the case that he was accused in the Tester comments of having drunkenly been banging on a woman's door during a foreign trip during the Obama administration, to the point where the Secret Service had to get control of him to keep him from waking up the president. The Secret Service says that it has no record of any such incident. What clearly happened here, Brett, I think, is that Tester got a hold of a bunch of anonymous allegations against Ronny Jackson. And it's perfectly legitimate for a senator to collect such things and to look into them. What he did instead was, without verifying them, he simply released them to the public, which I think has been widely viewed as being below the belt. After all, Brett, there were plenty of reasons relating to Ronny Jackson and his lack of administrative experience as to whether he was qualified to run a giant bureaucracy like the VA, and there was plenty of reason to question that, and perhaps he was not the best man for the job. But what Tester did was a form of character assassination, unverified allegations. Haven't we had enough experience over this past year with unverified allegations and their use?
Yeah, and so as a political cudgel, is it effective? He's up for re-election in Montana, a state where President Trump won more than 80% of the counties. There's not really a strong opposition candidate there, but is it an effective tool in the midterm election hopes of Jon Tester to squelch them?
Well, my first instinct would be to say, yeah, if this guy did this sleazy thing and the president and the Republicans make an issue of it out there, that might hurt him. But remember this, Brett, the news cycle that we're living through these days is so rapid that by the time, the fall rolls around and the campaign is on, I'm not sure how many people will remember Ronny Jackson or remember very much about the incident. It's just that, we live at such an accelerated pace in politics these days that things that seem like they're just huge and going to last forever last about 36 hours, and then we're on to something else. So I think it's possible they could make an issue of it, but it's not all clear to me that anybody will remember by the time we get to the fall.
That's right. We're one tweet away from changing the whole deal. Let me ask you about this. You listened to the ambassador, Dermer, from Israel, and you've obviously up on the Iran nuclear deal. Your thoughts on this as the president gets ready to make this decision by May 12th?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that what Benjamin Netanyahu established today was something that many of us, in fact, most of us perhaps have expected, which was that Iran has lied repeatedly, publicly, at the highest levels about its nuclear intentions. Arguably, that was the reason to try to make this deal. These revelations today do not establish, as far as I can tell, that Iran has broken that deal. And of course, the criticism of the deal, as you heard Ambassador Dermer say, is that even if Iran adheres to it, it's such a bad deal that we ought to get out of it. Of course, the counter-argument to that is if you do get out of it, Iran can accelerate its nuclear operations. And the counter to that, of course, is, well, we can impose sanctions. So we'll see.
We will see. Britt, as always, thank you.
Good.